Well, hello. Today's video, we will be making a very simple drawer. And this will be a short, sweet video showing you the process of making a simple drawer that can be utilized for the rest of the van. So here's the idea. On the left side of the van is my food prep area. I got my countertop, my sink, my coffee maker, all that good stuff. So ideally, I would like my plates, bowls, cups, utensils to be over here somewhere. I have decided to put a drawer in this cabinet because above it or below it is all my electronics, fully accessible through this cabinet door, and I don't need to get in there all that often, and then there's plenty of space above it to put a drawer. But the problem is this cabinet, as you can see, hits the other side of the van, so I can't make a drawer that slides out fully because it'll then hit this cabinet door. So I'm going to need to cut out this cabinet door to make a face frame or a face for the drawer itself, and it'll just slide out from the top of this cabinet door. Alright, so I laid out all the things that I want to fit in this drawer, and I think I'm going to make it 18 inches long, 18 inches wide, 22 inches long, and 6 inches deep. So I'm going to cut into this cabinet door 7 inches by 19 inches to give me a little bit of wiggle room. But what's going to be tricky is to cut it in a way that I can utilize the top scrap piece as an actual cabinet or the actual drawer front. Alright, so I put some tape down and marked my marks at 19 inches and 7 inches and one right down the middle. So I'm going to use my track saw to slowly sneak up on my outside lines, go in on the sides and slowly sneak in, and whatever is left on the inside I'll use my jigsaw and cut the rest of the material out. And as you can see, what's left in there, a little residue. Just going to take my jigsaw and very carefully cut out the rest of that. I'm going to use this pine board that I have. It's a 1x12. I'm going to cut all my sides first, and then I'll rip it down to the final 6-inch width once they're all cut. So with your 4-sided drawer, you've got your depth and your length, and the way I like to cut them is the depth is the exact measurement that I want my drawer to be depth-wise. So I got 20 inches. I want a 20-inch deep drawer, so I cut my sides 20 inches. And with my widths, the front and the back, you've got to compensate for the width of your material. So I got 1.5 inches, so I had to make my front and back pieces 16.5 if I want an 18-inch width drawer. Lengthwise, that way when I have the front like that, that'll be what you see, but because I've got a face frame going on it, it'll cover up that edge grain, and when you open the drawer you'll see a solid piece and you won't see the edges like that. This is the way I like to make them. Just a little thing, no fancy joinery, no cutting. I'm just gonna butt them up to each other and staple it, and then the bottom piece, typically you cut a rabbet down the middle of it, or not the middle, but the edge of it, probably about a 1/4 inch up. You'll cut a rabbet and you'll slide in a 1/4 inch sheet of plywood, and that's very simple, very good drawer bottom. But I want my depth to be as maximum as possible, so I'm going to cut a 1/4 inch piece of plywood, the exact dimension of the drawer bottom, and then nail it from the bottom. Just tested it, made sure it fit good. Let's go ahead and put a bottom on it. And my phone overheated. Typical Georgia fashion. Too hot for it. So I'm gonna put you guys over here in the shade. I put my bottom on, just nailed it from the back side. And I'm placing my things that I have in this drawer to space it out so I can build some little compartments for all this stuff. All right, so the first piece I built was just this little compartmentalizer for my silverware. I just had a 1/2-inch sheet of plywood that I cut into 2-inch strips, and then I spaced them 2 inches apart and made 1/4-inch plywood dividers, and I just super glued all these pieces together, and it'll just fit in there in the corner just like that. And the next piece, I built this one out of some of that leftover pine that I had from making the drawer, and I put little stopper blocks on the edge of it. None of this stuff is extremely pretty, but it does the job. And I put some stopper blocks on the edges of the pine box that I built. So this just sits down in there like so. And that gives me some more storage space. The way I built the cabinet in the van was the top piece has like a little 3/4-inch piece of plywood as a bracer, so I'm having to compensate for that on this piece. So this drawer is going to have to hang from the roof of the cabinet, so it's going to be the bottom of the butcher block that I've got in there. This of course is upside down, so I marked 4 inches from the back. My little spacer in the cabinet is only 3 inches, so having it 4 inches will give me a little maneuverability to make sure this front face is as flush with the front of the cabinet as possible. So when I put on the face of the drawer, it'll line up perfectly with the door. All right, it works. Don't pay any attention to the paint splattered on the bottom. It is the bottom. You'll never see it. It was just a piece of scrap plywood that I had. Well, I put on the hinges. They work. Now let's take the drawer off and try to install this piece. Okay, confession couch. Being totally transparent with you guys, this drawer has not worked at all. I think the issue was I have a structural bar that I put inside of this cabinet, and the piece that I built initially out of that 3/4 plywood that holds those slides was, when I put it in there and tried to slide it over to be even with the cutout of the door, it kept hitting that, so I couldn't push it over enough. So I cut off this piece and put pocket holes in it, but when I drilled up those pocket holes, it kept tweaking this sideways. Finally messed around with it enough to where it was sliding good, and as you can see, I had to put a spacer on the front of this, a tape to taper down, because this side was recessed an inch and the other side was just, I messed with it enough to where I don't know what the issue is. So I'm just going to totally rebuild this system, and hopefully we can get this working. Ladies and gentlemen, I got it to work. The only thing I changed to make it work from the original design was, instead of that 3/4 inch piece of plywood at the top, I have a 1/4 inch piece of plywood at the top. So that by doing that, I dropped it down about a 1/4 inch, and I had to cut this bottom door a 1/4 inch to allow this spacing. And the grain still matches pretty well. It looks like it could almost disappear, but the tolerance had to be within about 1/8 of an inch, just because of the door and the thickness allowing it to open the way it does. If it was any tighter, it would bind on this side and this side. So that's why it's as big as a gap as it is. But I don't mind that. I got it to close very good. It works, soft close. Now let's put everything in here.